Okay, we are now live.
Okay, we're all set, Peter.
Peter, I just wanted to make sure you knew you were muted.
Good afternoon. This is Peter Diwan. We will call to order the April 30th meeting of the Downtown Development Authority. This is new technology, so I appreciate everyone's patience, and hopefully we will conduct this meeting efficiently. I would like to make the members of the public note that you will have an opportunity to address the board during the public comment section of our meeting. Each board member will be called on individually to speak during each item. A board member may say pass if they do not have a comment for that item. And board members are to be reminded that they would state their name before speaking or making a motion, etc. All votes will be taken by a roll call vote. So with that said, I would ask Chad to take the roll, please.
Ballline,
Here.
Mayor Byer, Mayor Byer,
Sorry, here.
Clayton,
Here.
Kroom, Diwan,
Present.
Acne,
Present.
Kruger.
Here.
Lahanis,
Here.
Rhodey,
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Completes the roll call.
Thank you. We have a quorum. I will ask, are there any changes to the agenda as presented by staff?
None from staff.
Okay, seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Ask for a second.
Luke Acme, support.
Thank you, Luke. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The agenda is approved. Since this is a public meeting via Zoom, at the recommendation of the city attorney, we have a motion for consideration. I will make a motion to maintain the order of an online public meeting, move to adopt a rule pursuant to MCL 15.3, limiting public comment to 2 minutes per individuals, and ask for a second.
Luke Acme, I'll second that.
All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Seeing none, the motion has been approved. We have the minutes from our April 23rd meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes? Seeing none, I will approve the minutes as presented and ask for a second.
Luke Acme, support.
Thank you, Luke. All those in approval of the April 23rd minutes, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. We have no financial report before us this afternoon. We will move on to written communications. We have the letter that was sent to the mayor and members of council regarding the DDA's intent to offer financial support to downtown businesses during this difficult time. We also have a letter from the DMB regarding business support. And we have an email from Mr. Muth, Tom Muth, that is all contained in our packet. We will now proceed to the portion of our meeting where we will open up for comments from the audience. And again, to remind the public, each caller will be in a queue. You will have 2 minutes to address the board. Nicole will help us as far as calling the last 3 digits of your telephone number where you will be unmuted. And Nicole, I will pass that over to you now if you will help us receive public comment.
Thank you, Chair Diwan. The first caller has a phone number ending in 069. Caller 069, would you like to address the board?
Hi there, board and staff. This is Dylan Rush with the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. I appreciate the Zoom invite, but my technological difficulties. I'm on the phone and I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Apologies for not joining via Zoom the proper way.
Very good. Welcome, Dylan, and I'm certain that we will get back to you when we address our business item. Nicole, could you move on to the next person from the public that wishes to address the board?
Yes, the next caller is a phone number ending in 963. Caller ending in 963, would you like to address the board?
No, pass, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Diwan. That is the end of the attendee list and the end of public comment.
Okay, seeing no additional public comment or communications from the audience, we will close that portion of the meeting and move on to our business agenda item 5.1. There are a number of attachments that are included. One happens to be a memo from the city attorney. Hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to review that memorandum. We are going to begin a discussion about a proposed business relief program. I think it would help DDA members if I might invite Mr. Yaden to speak to his memo. And if there are any questions, we can address those prior to us getting into the dialogue about the business relief program. So, Mr. Yaden.
Thank you, Chair Diwan. I was asked to draft a memo as to whether DDA board members could be grant applicants under the recent proposal that they passed with regard to giving grants to various businesses located in the DDA. I understand that there's potentially 3 DDA members that are potential grant applicants due to the scope of the grants that were approved. The basic of it is that they can, in fact, be applicants and can contract with the city under some limited circumstances. They have to make certain disclosures to the board 7 days prior to the actual grant being issued, and then or the contract actually being approved of, and then that particular grant they cannot vote on, and then they would have to the board has to vote on it with 2/3 of the full membership approval, in excess of 2/3. So that's basically the substance of it. So it has to be passed by a supermajority of the board without the applicant's vote being counted or his presence being counted as a quorum, or her presence.
Thank you. Are there questions that any board member may have of the city attorney? Okay, seeing none. Tom, I will turn it over to you I will preface it with the fact that we had an advisory committee that was established as a result of our last meeting with the DDA. That advisory committee was Jill Rohde, Jeff Smith, and myself. We looked at ways in developing a fair and equitable distribution of the resources that we have allocated from our budget, and tried to come up with a plan that was going to be both impactful and expeditious as far as getting money in the hands of business owners. And so what is presented today is for the full DDA's discussion and consideration. And with that said, I will turn it over to Tom, and perhaps you can help facilitate the conversation for us.
Certainly, and in fact, I'm going to ask Ms. Pope to kind of walk you through
the relief program guidelines that were developed by the committee. And I'm sure you've all had a chance to review them, but maybe just to walk you through kind of the basic gist of it. And then I would hope that she'd then pass it over to the committee members for some additional context. And then we'd be happy to take any of your questions. So Ms. Pope, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So for the business eligibility program, the business relief program, there are going to be 5 requirements that all businesses seeking funds must meet all the requirements. They must be physically located in a brick and mortar location within the DDA district. They need to be directly affected and listed by the executive order and subsequent related executive orders. They must demonstrate income loss specifically related to COVID-19. They also must demonstrate need for working capital, and the businesses must not be delinquent on any accounts, fees, assessments, real estate, personal property tax, taxes, etc., to the state of East Lansing. So those are the 5 requirements. Moving on to page 2 is the application scoring criteria. There'll be a committee that's created consisting of LEAP staff, Capital Region Michigan Small Business Development Center staff, Capital Area Michigan Works, and MSU, who will score the following criteria. 30 points for economic distress, 30 points for working capital need, 25 points in the area of community impact history in the downtown, and 15 points for uniqueness of product, service, and offerings. And I won't go into each description of these right now. I'll wait until we can have a discussion on that with the other committee members who worked on this. We are also asking that they disclose any grants that they have received or have been approved through to receive through any other entity related to COVID-19 relief. So moving on to page 3 is the review process. Again, there's going to be a panel that's been going to be reviewing this separately from the DDA. First stage, there's an 8-person application scoring panel, 3 staff members from LEAP, 1 from Spdc, 1 from Capital Michigan Works, 1 from MSU, and 2 from other larger business community, which will make up a total of 4 scoring committees. Each scoring team will be 2 persons, and they will be responsible for scoring approximately 25% of the grant applications. When they're done scoring, each team will elevate their top 30 to 40 applications to the 2nd level stage for consideration. And at that stage, it's a 5-person delivery panel consisting of 3 LEAP staff, 1 Spdc staff, and 1 Capital Area Michigan Works staff. We are going to they will approximately deliberate on 150 top applications and then recommend the top 100 business applications to receive a $2,500 grant to the DDA for approval. Once that's done, the businesses will be notified immediately, and there's some quick turnaround of some information they'll have to submit as part of that. So that is the criteria that has been set up for that, for this program. I do just want to go over if the DDA was to approve a program, staff have gone ahead and outlined the steps and dates and deadlines that we'll be meeting. So if the DDA was to approve a program today at their meeting, a press release would be issued this evening and emailed to, we have a large number of businesses in the DDA district where we are able to gather their email addresses. So we'll be also emailing those businesses directly with this press release. We're going to set up a web page that will go live sometime tomorrow, Friday, May 1st. It will include the business eligibility application scoring criteria that I just reviewed. Application. The application won't be fillable at that point, but it'll be a PDF copy of the application. So parties interested in applying for this will have a chance to look at this ahead of time, the application. A copy of the DDA boundary map. Frequently asked questions document, a copy of the press release, an email link that's been set that will be set up specifically for this program, and again the timeline. Moving forward, we would finalize documents with LEAP beginning tomorrow, May 1st, and work over the weekend through May 3rd The application would go live on Tuesday morning, May 5th at 9 a.m. We would send out a concurrent press release along with that, and the application will be online along with a frequently asked question Google form. So if someone is working on their application and has a question, they can go ahead and enter that question and get a response. We'll be doing ongoing social media advertising during this time. The application closes on Thursday, May 7th at 11:59 p.m. The first stage review will begin on May 8th and will take place on Friday, Saturday, and closing on Sunday, May 10th. The first stage reviews, those applications will then, that are chosen, will be moved on to the second stage review, which will take place on Monday, May 11th. And based on that anticipated schedule, the DDA could schedule a special board meeting on May 13th or May 14th. And then following that meeting, notification would be mailed to all the applicants who were awarded a grant. And we'll also follow up with them at that time with the documents they need to submit in order to receive payment. And then we worked out where we could do a special check run with our finance department on Monday, May 18th, to get those checks into the business's hands. So at this time, I'll turn it over to the committee so they can add any additional information I may have left out. Jill or Jeff, do you either have either?
Thank you, Heather. That was very helpful and very informative. I would offer my 2 cents on this. I know there's been a lot of ideas that have been expressed, and our intent from the inception of this was to be deliberate, to be efficient, to be expeditious, and to get money in the hands of the business owners who are struggling at the moment. There was some discussion at our previous meeting about the city taking on this responsibility in-house instead of it being contracted with LEAP. I don't see how that would have been an efficient way to do things when the city would have to start from the ground up to try and get a program in place, which has already been successfully engineered and worked with LEAP. So in that view, I think it is a good program for us to accomplish our objective. Those are a couple of my thoughts. Jill or Jeff, you were part of the committee. If you wanted to offer your comments at this time.
Go ahead, Jill.
I don't really have anything to add.
Thank you.
I think it was all well said. I think Heather summarized it well. I'm hoping that we can turn it around as fast as possible, and these checks can get out as fast as possible to the companies that need them.
Thank you.
Can I make a motion? Chair, can I make a motion or?
Sure, George.
So George, just saying or do you want to add more? If there's more discussion, that's fine, but I was just gonna say make a motion to approve the plan as presented.
It looked like Michael had his hand raised.
That's fine. I can wait till discussion. That's fine.
So George has offered a motion, and I will second your motion, George. Michael, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand raised. We will discuss the motion. Michael, you seem to have some questions or comments.
I did, yeah, thank you. First question, I guess, was for the $10,000. It sounds like, according to what Heather just kind of went over as far as all of the processing of everything and actually taking care of getting the checks out to people, and other than a couple of members of LEAP that are on the review board, what exactly did we pay them for other than the outline of how to do this?
Good question, Michael. Yep. Is Dylan still part of the phone call as well? Dylan Rush?
Yes, hi there.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard Michael's question, but
I did, yeah.
If you could respond, please.
Well, sure. It's been a fun week going back and forth with Heather and Tom and the committee. putting a lot of thought into the eligibility and the scoring criteria and the review process. What's really ahead of us now is the bulk of the work, where for the next 2 weeks, a really strong, structured, thorough, and focused process will eventually come to fruition for the betterment of your DDA. So there is, I can try to be as explicit and descriptive as I can here in what the work entails, but essentially there'll be about 3 or 4 people working all day Friday and into Saturday on conflict of interests and going through 150, 200, 250 applications with intense scrutiny, putting a lot of effort into trying to find the value that can be placed with these dollars. And then more conversation is had between each teams. That goes on for essentially another day as well, and trying to root out any biases and come to agreement on your top score. Then you kick it to the next review committee for full-on vetting. We don't want multiple grants going to a business owner that may have 5 businesses, when there's limited funding. Trying to provide as much equity as we can related to the scoring criteria as possible over a full day or two with the second stage review committee, who are very experienced in it and understand the task at hand, so that we can get it efficiently processed. During the application window, there's 5. Thursday. There's a week of time for open communication between us as the administrator and the many applicants. And I promise you that that's in and of itself a project alone, ensuring quality communication, yet maintaining the objectivity and transparency that is the foundation of this process. So ongoing from the press release all the way through the end of the application, there is regular and ongoing staff communication with the applicants to make sure their questions are answered.
Sorry.
Okay, I was about halfway.
Yeah, go right ahead.
I know I'm just,
Yep, go ahead.
I'm rambling.
Nope,
I'll try to wrap it up. I just want you all to know the burdensome work that will be placed on us and on East Lansing staff otherwise. Burden's probably not the right word, but a heavy lift, for the mission of the DDA. There's communications with the applicants for awards, grant agreements, W-9s, bank information. There's denial letters, connecting to resources, reporting for the next 6 months, et cetera. That kind of is longer than just these first few days when you talk about the $10,000. So that was a long-winded answer. I apologize for that.
I don't doubt that there's some work into it, though I wouldn't call it a burden being paid for it, but I understand exactly what you're saying.
You're right.
That being said, as far as the review process and the panel is concerned, I see that there's 3 LEAP members on that panel, and then we've got one from the SBDC. One SBDC, one CAMW, a couple from MSU, and a couple from larger businesses. Are they getting any part of that $10,000 for their time, or is that just going to LEAP?
Well, I want to make one clarification. That's an interesting point. But first, and this is for you, Heather. For the review committee, and perhaps we just mixed up our documents in the process. I believe the advisory committee on Monday did settle on 4 LEAP staff, 2 SBDC, and 2 Michigan Works.
Okay.
As the 8-person panel. Now the advisory committee can either confirm that or contrast it, but I'm pretty sure in my notes I have that written down.
Yep. Okay.
Now, Michael, back to your question. That scoring panel was designated by the DDA, and LEAP is the facilitator of it. SBDC and Michigan Works are very strong partners with us and have stepped up to do some of the work in terms of the review process, but the facilitation, the administration of it, the logistical management is where that money lies.
So the answer is no?
Yes.
Peter, can I respond to this? It's Jill.
Yeah, well, I'd like to take people in order and try to do the best I can as far as acknowledging people that wish to speak. I know that Lindsay had her hand raised, so we can get back to.
I would like to hear Jill's answer to that question before I make my question, please.
Okay,
When-
go
when
ahead,
we-
Jill.
Important.
When
I'd
we
like-
originally asked LEAP for a quote, it was for approximately $1,500, $10,000 grants. They said they'd do it for 10,000. We are now asking them to do 100, 2,500. We've asking them to do 10 times the work, and they have agreed to do it for the same price. I think that's incredibly generous of them, and do not think that the $10,000 is unreasonable. That's my response to the question about the fee.
Okay, so if we're going to me next.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
I'm really concerned when I listen to the news and I talk about, and I hear about all of the counties and the cities that are having to lay people off. And I do not feel comfortable spending 10,000 again. And I know we've already voted on this, but I want it very clear. I do not feel comfortable shelling out money to other people to do things when we are a city that most likely is going to probably have to lay people off if we're in the same situation as a lot of other counties and municipalities. Furthermore, I'm also very concerned about the subcommittee of people from the DDA who were appointed to do this. And I had brought this up to Peter. I feel like we needed to have a business owner on this. We didn't have to have a DDA. It would be best not to have a DDA member. But I do not understand why we would not have a business owner on a subcommittee for something that is going to impact business owners. And if you don't want the only person who's not in the downtown that sits on the DDA, totally get that. But you needed to have someone from the outside community that is a small business owner to review this document. Because I went through it and I have edits all over it of things that I have questions about, that it would have been much more efficient if you had a small business owner looking at this before this meeting. I'll move on. You can go to the next person, but I have lots and lots of questions about this, and I hate that because I think it makes this meeting very inefficient. So I'm done. You can go to the next person.
I'll weigh in very
Thank you.
quickly from.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Lindsay. I established the committee. I want to make certain that there was not going to be any conflict of interest of any downtown business persons should they wish to make application for these grant monies. And so if you have any criticism, you can level it at me.
Oh, I am.
That's fine. And we can address your questions as we go through this business agenda item. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Michael?
Sorry, I'm sorry, Jeff. Give me one second. I just want to be clear with regards to what Tom stated earlier, as far as those of us who are involved in the potential application process for one of these grants. Are we having to recuse ourselves from any vote? I sort of understood what he was saying, but my audio was cutting in and out, and so I was getting frustrated, and I apologize. But I just want to make sure that, do I need to recuse myself from any sort of vote on this situation?
You should disclose your interest in the matter, and then ask the board to recuse yourself from the discussion and deliberations and voting on it.
So should I have done that before I made my comments public?
Well, your comments weren't specific to the documents, so or the qualifications, so I don't have an issue with it, but you probably should have. But
So let me get
again,
that. I am the only business owner here that gets to vote on this.
Lindsay.
Okay, I'm just confused.
we're having another DDA member has a question of the city attorney. So, Michael, I guess the question is, and to conclude with Tom Yaden, should Mr. Kruger recuse himself from additional conversations on this item?
If he plans on being a grant applicant, yes, he should disclose his interest that he is intending to be a grant applicant, and then he should ask the board to recuse himself from further deliberations, and then the board should take a vote on that recusal.
Okay,
So,
Michael? Michael, do you elect to participate in the grant request?
undecided.
If I were you, I would probably just disclose and recuse either way. That way you're not, if you want to apply at some point, you don't have to worry about it. Same with Luke or
Sure.
anyone else that needs to or wants to.
Luke Acme, I
Sure.
won't. I won't be trying to take this money. I won't be voting on this either. Just so at least one business owner has a voice today.
Okay.
All right. That being said, I will opt to recuse myself from further discussion. I think I've said what has been said already, and I will leave it to everybody else on the board to have this debate today. So
Thank you. So I will make a motion to recuse Michael and ask for a second.
I'll be second. Yep. I'll be second.
That was seconded by Lindsay. I don't know who seconded my
Just
motion.
in my head, yes, but you can't see me, so yes.
Okay. And if we could take action on this, it's been moved and supported to recuse Michael. If anyone wants to speak to that motion, you're welcome to do so. If not, we will take a roll call vote.
There are two of us, but you can't see us. It's Luke Hackney and Lindsay Clayton. He can go first.
Yeah, Luke Hackney. This is a question for Mr. Yaden, I guess. Do we actually? I mean, what happens if we vote no? Or does that not work in Michael's favor? I mean, he closed it. If we all agree that we're fine with it, can't we move forward with that?
The bylaws of the DDA, am I unmuted?
Yes.
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 Okay. The bylaws of the DDA state that the interest has to be disclosed. The disclosure shall become part of the board's official proceedings. Any member making a disclosure with the approval of the board shall refrain from participating in the board's decision process. So the board has to approve it. Otherwise, he is free to make discussions. But that's the bylaws, and I have more concerns, I guess, about the state law. So my recommendation would be to approve his recusal, just so we don't get into trouble down the road when he's an applicant.
Thank you, Tom.
Any additional discussion?
Is there
Seeing none-
anyone else? Well, real quick, Peter, is there anyone else that we need to, can we adjust this so that if anyone else needs to recuse themselves for any other reason, we could do that all at once?
Is there anyone else? It would be Greg.
Yeah, no, guys, I'm fine. I won't be applying for this. No way.
Okay. So I will ask Chad to take the roll call on recusing Michael from further discussion.
Ballline,
Yes.
Mayor Byer,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Diwan,
Yes, and I note that Jim Kroom is part of this meeting. He's dialed in, but apparently we can't hear him. I don't know if city staff can look into that, but
Okay,
Hi,
Hackney,
now I'm unmuted, I heard. Can you hear me, Peter?
I can
Yeah.
hear you now, Jim. So, Jim, I think you've been part of the meeting all along, but we have a motion to recuse Michael Kruger participation
Yes,
from discussion on
I
this.
heard the motion. I heard the motion.
Okay.
I vote yes.
Okay,
okay. Hackney,
Yes.
does Kruger? Does he get a vote on this?
No.
no,
Lahanis,
Yes.
Wait, that was my vote.
Rhodey,
Yes. Yes.
and Smith?
Yes.
It
okay,
has not-
that's everyone. Thank you.
Yes.
So we'll recuse Michael. Thank you, Michael, for bringing that to our attention. Others that wish to speak to this item, I believe Lindsay had some additional comments.
Go with whoever's next. I've already said a lot, so let them have at it first.
Peter, if I may, Greg
Yes.
Ballline.
Yes.
Yes. You know, I initially wasn't in favor of this. I ended up voting yes for it because I really wanted the money to get out to businesses. I still have a lot of reservations with the application. You know, I think the goal of this was to get it to those most impacted by this and to get it to the smaller business owners. To that end, I don't see anything within the application that has any sort of income level. Will there be some sort of, I mean, the idea is to get it to maybe tiering the process, you know, those businesses less than $1 million, those less than 2 million, and they should become part of applications based on, you know, impact that we can create. The other portion that I'd kind of like to approach with the members with the application process is my goal all along was to get businesses to open on the 15th. And I see no requirement within this application that they're going to open their doors for business. So it may very well be that we get business owners that take the money and say, you know what, nobody's down here, I'm not going to open. And I don't know that that's in the best interest of the DDA. But I'd like to put those two thoughts out there on the application. Is there any comment on it?
I guess I can comment. George Lahanis here. I just don't know if we can put I mean, I'm willing to consider an opening date for people, but depending on their type of business, if they start to hire staff back and then the governor extends the deadline again, it seems so speculative to try to have people in place and ready to have an operation with food or materials to go, and then the governor extends you again, and then you're back to being closed for another 2 weeks. Or it just seems very uncertain to say that we have to have it open by that soon a date. Maybe if there's a later date, but then how do we know they're open before we give them the money? So I think that might be tough to do. I understand the principle of it. It just seems in practicality, it seems tough.
Yeah, I won't disagree with that, George. I think that was well said. And I don't pretend to know what date would work for people. I mean, I guess, you know, maybe some sort of code of ethics in order to apply for it. I don't know. I don't know how that would function, but I know that was my goal, was to get businesses some relief so that they had some funds to open their businesses so that it doesn't become that whole tsunami down Grand River of why be open? Nobody's open.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I'm just not sure how we can pick that, how we can make them do it, or I don't know.
How can
Peter, I don't know if you could see it. Luke has his hand raised too.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with George too. Is there any way that we could just very simply state that the opening date has to coincide with whatever the executive orders.
This is Lindsay.
Or,
I think it's important that we leave the businesses with that decision on when it's appropriate for them to open. Because if you think about, I mean, just think about if you're someone like me that has kids at home and they can't go to school yet, and you have to open your business, is that really, I think that that's sometimes lost in this, is that we have business owners that have to do what's best for them. And if you can't put your kids to daycare or school, then we tell you you have to open and it's not safe for you to open. You take your kids into a restaurant? No.
Point made, Lindsay.
This is Jim Kroom. May I weigh in, Peter?
Peter, you might be muted.
Pardon me?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I've been trying to interject all along and I've been muted the whole time, so I apologize. Jim, I think you had a comment you'd like to make.
Oh, thank you. I'm just uncomfortable on the last point. I understand the spirit. It's kind of the carrot to get downtown open again, but I share sort of the viewpoint that it's really difficult, makes me uncomfortable requiring someone to open when there could be a myriad of reasons why they don't. Even if they don't open in time, they probably desperately need the money. I don't know if Tom Yaden would have a view on whether we can, I suppose if we're giving money out, we can require anything we wish, but just uncomfortable requiring people to open.
Thank you, Jim. Is
Peter, if I will, this is Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
2 points. The $10,000 to Leap, I view as paying for software. They did the heavy lifting on the front end to make sure that all this process could go smoothly and that the turnaround and gathering of reviewers could take place. I don't see it as paying them $10,000 for the labor that they're going to do post the time. Dylan stayed on the phone with us for about 3 hours, 2.5, 3 hours, working through a lot of these nuances. This is not an easy process whatsoever, not for anybody, not for the volunteers, not for the staff, not for Leap, not for the companies that are going to either receive it or not, or for the applicants to determine whether or not it's a good idea. Secondly, I don't feel like a clawback provision or a forced pathway for the funds is necessary. You may find that, half of the companies that are in the DDA close their doors and that's it. The $10,000, or I'm sorry, the funds going to the companies could pay for their house to stay out of bankruptcy for a month and they become a East Lansing resident for that much longer. We don't know what they're going to use the money for. The benefit of this is that we don't know what they're going to use the money for. I would be against doing this process altogether if we had clawback provisions or requirements for what they do with the cash. The grant is the grant. The money is the money. If the companies need it for buying inventory, if they need it for buying, food for their kids, if they are companies in our DDA, they're applying, they have to be active at the time when they apply. Forcing them to open up at a certain date would be very, very difficult.
Could I make a quick comment, Chair?
Yes, go ahead, George. And then I think Lindsay, and I thought I saw Jill's hand raised.
Yeah.
I'm actually okay with something like what Greg suggested, perhaps just an honor system with no penalty, but just when they apply for it, that they say that their intent is to reopen their business. And then at least it's up to them, but at least they're saying that they have an intent to reopen a business, and we don't try to get money back and we don't have any punitive, but at least if they're applying with the intent and the goodwill that they're going to be opening their business in the future, which preserves our downtown. Let them spend it however they want, to Jeff's point on whatever they're going to do, but just they intend to reopen, let them apply, let them get the money, move on.
It can't be penalized. Yeah, we can't have
no penalized. And no date, just their intent is to reopen. That's it.
Thank you. Lindsay, I think you had your hand raised.
No, let Jill go first, please.
You're muted, Jill.
Jill, you're muted.
Jill, you're muted.
Didn't raise my hand. I was just stretching or something. So that was
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So on the grant application that's on city letterhead, because we have two attachments, the LEAP part, and then we have ours. Are we going through the actual one with our letterhead on it?
No, at this point, we're just discussing the eligibility application scoring criteria and review process. Staff included a draft of the actual application, which is based on this document in its current form. We would need to change it based on any changes that you make to the eligibility. We just wanted to provide it as a framework for the discussion.
Okay, so I should tell you what I think is wrong with this or no?
I think it's probably most effective if we start with the eligibility criteria and then move on to that discussion about, you know, how to make sure that the actual application is in line with the criteria as the DDA wants to approve.
Okay.
Does any board member have a question about the eligibility requirements and criteria? I'm sorry, does anyone have questions about the eligibility criteria?
Yes, backward.
Can everyone hear me?
Okay,
Yep.
I just have one
Yeah,
question.
we hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
It's referenced in number 4 that we are going to be asking for possibly supporting documents, including payroll expenses, rent, mortgage payment, utility expenses, or other similar expenses. And then it talks about in this other document that all of these supporting documents are FOIA-able. And I have some concerns about anyone in the general public being able to see individual companies' payroll information and their mortgage payments and who they make their mortgage to. This seems for $2,500 that a bunch of us felt like we just want to get it out to our downtown businesses. We want to help save them. This seems like it's a bit intrusive, and maybe I'm totally wrong and people are willing to give that away for $2,500. But I would like some feedback if other people think that's appropriate or if I'm maybe misreading this.
If I may, Chair, and I will ask Dylan to add some additional context here, but I think the intent is not to require any kind of financial documentation such as that, just that they demonstrate that they have experienced a hardship. And I believe they would do that through the question set that's in the application, but I don't know if you have any additional context, Dylan.
That's correct. No financial documentation, no tax docs, anything like that. But they can demonstrate working capital, you know, through the questions that talk about employment, you know, March 1st versus, you know, May 1st or whatever the application question is, and a working capital need would then be demonstrated as payroll, which they would click along with other things like rent or utility expenses, etc. So there's no need for financial documentation, but by sheer nature of a public program, I almost 100% positive everything submitted would be FOIA-able. That's just the way it is, I believe. We wanted to make sure that the applicants knew that right up front.
Yeah. Wow.
Peter, I do have my hand up this time.
Peter, you were muted. Jill has a question.
I just wanted for everybody to know, the subcommittee did not look at the application. We only looked at the criteria. We have not reviewed the application. So if you've got any issues, you think this is really the first time we've looked at it too. I just want to clarify that. We only talked about the criteria. we did not have a chance to even see this application. So if you have any issues with it, we may also share those because we, like I said, this was not part of our review process.
Thanks, Jill, for that, bringing that clarification. And I agree with Lindsay. Likely any business owner is not going to want to release this type of confidential information. So we can speak to how we can protect the confidential information of our downtown businesses and yet still make the grant available.
Luke Acme, I've had my hand raised for
Sorry.
5 minutes. Yeah, I guess I would just say that I would just strike 4 altogether. It kind of goes against the grain of what Jeff was suggesting when he suggested that he didn't care how people use this money, quote unquote. Then why do we care? I mean, why do they need to prove a financial hardship? I can't imagine anybody not having some sort of financial hardship.
They all are.
Yeah.
We don't know what they're going to use the money for. They all are. We
So
can all
let's
assume
just
that at
strike
this
the
point.
entire thing off the application.
Well, if you're going to do that, then I would hope, I know we're not supposed to talk about this, but I don't understand how we're supposed to pass one without the other. If you go to page 3, city grant specifics, there is an extensive section about business ownership, how long you've owned your business, which does it talk about multi-generational businesses, how long you've been in the DDA. Our DDA boundaries have actually changed since I've been part of this process. Like in city government, do you own your building? Do you have a mortgage on it? How much of your mortgage is paid off? Is it free and clear? Other type of loan, land contracts? I'm sorry, but when I review this, this is a lot of specific information. It doesn't even reference, if you go to, are you the owner of the business? First name, then are you asking for silent partners too? Like, I don't even understand why this matters. This is not the nature of what we were doing with this. And I find this really offensive.
Go ahead, Tom.
This is why you need a business owner on this committee. This is why you need it.
Right. But again, we didn't look at the application. I agree. What do we care if they were bankrupt? What do we care? There's a lot of stuff on here I just don't think needs to be on this application.
Luke,
Again,
just for lack of not getting called on, can I ask why it wasn't looked at? Is it because it wasn't given to you? I'm not blaming you guys. I'm just, was it not ready? Was it not
so
pertinent?
Peter, if I may.
Yeah,
the
go
committee,
ahead, Tom.
The committee met on Monday at length to discuss the business eligibility application scoring criteria and review process. And then we were really trying to work quickly to get things posted for the public and the board. Dylan and staff at LEAP worked together with Heather and I to draft the application that would be part and parcel with the eligibility. And so we did that very quickly in an attempt to get it in front of you for this meeting today. I still think that it would be most effective if we discussed the eligibility first, and then based on what the DDA prefers in terms of the eligibility and scoring criteria, that can help us add that context to what is this draft of the application. And we certainly will take any input that you have on the application. It's a starting point based on where we were as of Monday evening. It's really just a draft for your discussion, and we appreciate your input.
Okay, I'd like to weigh in here because several DDA members are, I apologize if I'm not able to recognize you. It's my limitations with regard to the technology that I have at the moment, so I don't see everyone. I would just say if members could politely offer their opinions, and then we will have a free-floating conversation. If I need to interject to try to facilitate the discussion, I will do so. I see Jill's hand raising.
No, again.
Okay,
Peter, Greg Ballline.
go ahead, Greg.
Okay, thank you. So are we speaking, when we're talking about eligibility, are we speaking about the LEAP document? Or are we speaking about on the application? I just want to clarify what we're looking at.
The LEAP document is the
Okay.
eligibility criteria.
That's kind of what I thought. I just want to make sure. I see a lot of documents going back and forth and I'm kind of confused. So I wouldn't disagree with striking number 4. I agree with what's been said that, you know, I think that there's a number of businesses who really aren't interested in sharing detailed, deep dive stuff on their business. And that's kind of why I proposed, you know, maybe a gross revenue level, just to prioritize the smaller businesses. I think they're the ones we really want to reach out to, and I think we can have the most effect in that way to make sure that they're prioritized monetarily. But I do think there should also be at least, you know, an admission that they, you know, I don't know, yeah, it's hard. What they use the money for, you're right, Jeff, it's their business.
Thank you, Greg. Are there other comments? And again, just please step up if you have an opinion or a comment you wish to make. If you could just state your name.
Luke Acne, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Luke.
Yeah, going off of that, I agree with striking number 4. I would actually say number 3 is probably tied to that as well. Businesses must demonstrate income loss specifically related to the COVID-19 pandemic or executive order rather than financial hardship in general. Again, I just feel like there isn't anybody that couldn't make a claim that they've had financial hardship because of this.
Okay. Other comments?
I mean, this is George.
Yeah,
I think at least having them tell us there's some financial hardship, I think is a pretty reasonable thing if someone could give us something on that. I mean, there are large scale law firms downtown that I don't know if they're impacted by this. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, I could think of 2 large law firms that are located downtown. Have they been impacted by this? I don't know. I think that the restaurants and the coffee shops and the ice cream stores and those places have been greatly more impacted. So don't you want to be able to weight that in some way? It might be relevant. Maybe we can thin out some of the data they got to give and the information. But I think having them at least tell us there's some hardship here, I think is a reasonable thing to try to assess who needs what.
This is Jeff. Can you
go ahead, Jeff?
Can you put that in the application itself? Just the intention of in the description, the intention of this grant is to, you know, provide funds to companies in the DDA that are experiencing hardship during this time. And if a law firm that's well-heeled and doesn't need it at all is applying to this and their name is broadcast in the press, it's probably going to be counterintuitive for the amount that they're receiving.
Agreed.
I think it's a simple description.
Thank you. Additional comments?
Going off the law firm comments, this is Lindsay, when I think of, isn't there like the rental housing clinic that's in Campus Mall and places like that? No, there are lawyers that might actually need this to help with the influx of things that they have to do and people that can't pay them. So I do think that I don't think we should exclude someone like a law firm just right off the bat.
I'm not saying we're excluding them. I'm just saying having them say that there's some hardship, I think is a reasonable thing. Even if it's at the end of their application where they sign and say, you know, putting this application in because we're experiencing hardship due to the COVID crisis, I think is a reasonable step.
Right.
Thank you. Are others wishing to offer a comment? Thank you. I'll take it back to Tom. Some of the ideas that have been proposed, how would we amend those? How would we amend the document? Tom?
You can either, can you hear me?
Yeah.
You could decide to do that today via a motion, or you could give staff general direction on what you'd like added or removed, and make a motion that allows us to do that. Or you could decide to direct that that type of update to staff, and then schedule another meeting to review our work. Those would be three options. There's probably others.
Jill,
Go ahead, Joe.
some of that criteria is included in the scoring points. So like if we got rid of working capital, we have that worth 30 points. So I mean, that they go hand in hand. So if we change them, we would have to reallocate the points and determine how we're going to do that. That's the only comment I'm like. So if we drop it up to the top, we've got to reallocate how we're doing the points later.
Luke Acme, I'm totally fine with that.
I'd like to ask a question for staff or Tommy Aiden, because, or to that end, those that have been involved in this project previously, maybe Dylan can weigh in. All of the data that is being requested is quite extensive, and clearly business owners would not like to turn over this confidential information. However, that does add to the evaluation of determining need. How does this process work in a manner where it the judging can be done, and the judging is a foiable approach, or is that possible?
Peter, I'll jump in on that. Tom Yaden.
Yes.
While there are provisions for submitting items to a public body confidentially, those are really not very workable, and so it's the FOIA law is going to make, you know, anything that comes within the city's hands, the FOIA law is going to require disclosure. So the only way to the only way to get that information and not have it FOIAble is to have a third party review it that's not subject to FOIA.
Is
But
LEAP
again, that's-
subject to FOIA?
Yes. Public group.
Say that again.
LEAP is subject to FOIA?
LEAP is not subject to FOIA.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. So can't we just have them be the sort of black box? The applications go in there, the stuff comes out, and they tell us who to give the money to? And stuff all goes to them and stays with them?
If the DDA is not going to have the actual information, or just have a compilation that can, you know, just the documents the DDA gets will be subject to FOIA.
Jill,
Go ahead, Jill.
the entire application isn't anywhere like what I envisioned it to be. I thought you'd fill in your name, your company, and then there'd be like 3 or 4 paragraphs of narrative where you describe how this has impacted your business. You describe how long you've been around, and you know what type of business and how beloved you are in the community. That's what I saw, just kind of like where they just kind of described why they need it. Not this detailed provide. You know, maybe that was naive of me, but that's what I saw it as they just tell their story, and that's what they use to be evaluated from.
This is Lindsay, and
Go ahead, Lindsay.
I would like to say that when I voted to support this last week, I would never have voted if I had seen this. I would never have supported it. So I want it to go on the record that this is not the spirit at all of what we're doing, and asking for someone to prove their financial hardship in a town where more than half of our population base is gone. It's just gone. I think it makes us look silly that we're like asking you to like tell us that you've been impacted. I mean, all you have to do is drive downtown. I'm done.
Can I jump in a second?
Yep.
George here.
Go ahead, George.
I think we're unnecessarily being a little tough on staff here. Staff is working under tough situations to try to get information quickly to the board to implement the program, and they came up with a version of something. So if we want to do something different, let's just go in that direction without, saying what a bad job they did about it. If we want to just have a narrative, just we'll put your paragraphs in with a narrative saying how this hardship has impacted you, how, what changes you've had to make because of COVID, and what's your intent in the future with the business, whatever we want to say, give us the narrative, and then we score it. I think that we're kind of, going a little far on the staff has made a good effort here and worked hard to get this stuff in front of the board quickly with a short turnaround. If they worked on this on Monday, they basically had 2 days to get this ready for people. So that's my comment.
And I didn't want to sound like I was criticizing. It was just different than I envisioned what we were asking for from the participants.
Right.
Chair Diwan, may I, this is Dylan, may I chime in here for a bit?
Yeah, please, Dylan.
I appreciate all the comments, and I totally understand the sentiment. I mean, nobody wants to share their important private information, and nobody wants to be closed right now, and nobody wants to be stay at home. It's a very unfortunate situation, but with a limited pot of money, there is only one. I mean, you have to have an objective way to compare these applications in order to find where you can deliver the most impact. And simple narratives it's going to be really, really tough. Contrasting with X number of jobs on day 1 versus day 30, and then revenue what you did last year in April versus revenue what you did this year in April. You can really start to see the picture come together when you have that information. Otherwise, it's naturally going to be very subjective, and then you think you even get into more hot water potentially in terms of handpicking on who can write better, perhaps, rather than more factual information that, of course, is private, but these are public funds, and this is a business organization naturally in the Downtown Development Authority. We want to know how we can take these funds that were paid in by the businesses, to make the biggest impact on the businesses. That's just my 2 cents on the matter.
Thank you, Dylan. Are there others that wish to weigh in? Go ahead.
Are we doing a motion? If we're going to make those changes, do we need a motion then to amend the original motion? Because I would like to put that forward, that we eliminate 3 and 4, and we put 3 somehow into the
Application.
whatever Jeff said, the beginning statement or whatever.
If you're making a motion, Lindsay, I'm not real clear on what you just said, what your motion is.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to remove item 3 and 4. I would like to take Jeff Smith's comments regarding 3 and integrating that in a different fashion. And then I would like to discuss how that impacts the items on page 2, economic distress and working capital need. And I would like to see how we think that we need to change that. And I also don't want staff to feel offended. I thought we were hiring LEAP to do this, and it wasn't. It's not a slam on people. I just think that that's overreaching. And I'm done. Going on to the next person. Or if someone wants to second.
Is there a second for Lindsay's motion?
I'll support Lindsay's motion to remove item 3 and 4 from the business relief program and move item 3 to the application final draft.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Is anyone wishing to speak on the motion?
So quick question from George here. So then people, instead of saying yes or no to have you experienced financial damage because of COVID, or the executive orders, they're basically signing a statement that says, I'm putting my application in and certifying that I have experienced financial hardship because of COVID, right? So I mean, that's what they still have to tell us that.
Yes,
This is
in my
Tom.
opinion.
So
Yes,
my
Tom.
understanding is that Ms. Clayton was referencing the business eligibility application scoring criteria in her motion. Is that correct? Not the actual application itself, which would flow from that?
You told me that I was supposed to be going with the LEAP document.
Yes.
With
So
three-
I think George is referencing the application.
Yeah, I'm discussing application. Sorry, go ahead.
Take 3 and we put it into the application, right? Basically, this item 3, we're moving over into this, right?
Yes.
That was my understanding.
Okay. That was my motion or what? Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's gonna be hard to vote on that till we know how these numbers are. I mean, I think the numbering on the next section has to go hand in hand with that.
Thank you, Jill. That is probably a good place for us to start, and then we can make further revisions. So let's just go to page 2 and talk about the distributions of points and whether or not board members feel they need to be reallocated or we need to reference different areas. And anyone that wishes to speak on the point structure, please offer your comments.
Luke Acne, I have a question for Dylan, I guess.
Go ahead.
Dylan, how close is this to the grant that you recently administered? I believe
It is
to 60 businesses.
Yep, correct. It is. It's pretty similar, especially in the economic distress and working capital need. The advisory committee essentially in the community impact and history in downtown combined a couple of categories to 25 points there, where they can see how long the history or how long the business has been in the DDA, what's the story there, and that's the community impact. That was portrayed in a different way and had much less points previously, so that ramped up quite a bit. And by nature of that going up, the uniqueness of product, service, and offering went down a little bit, maybe 5 points to 15. Where that's all about, the differentiation, the coffee shop in town, the lawyer in town, what's special about the thing you do that makes you, deserving of this money, if you will. So it's in nature pretty similar, but the biggest impacts were, the biggest changes were in the community impact and history and downtown section. And then of course the other grants and funds section at the bottom is kind of a disclaimer of any other funding that they've received. That was not in there previously. Of course, that was a month ago.
Right. Thank you. Where is that? The other. So if they apply to this and they've already received that previous grant, can they still get this grant? Because that is one thing that I've talked to 8 business owners that are not on the DDA, and all 8 had that concern, in addition to a myriad of other concerns, but that are sort of irrelevant to this discussion.
I think that's for the board to decide.
Okay.
I think our thought was just, if you got another grant and there were people that hadn't gotten anything, we would consider the people that hadn't gotten anything before the people that had gotten another grant. It was just another thing in the criteria to get it from 200 down to 100. But no, it's not a yes or no. It was just something, if we knew, we could put it as part of the decision making. The team could put it as part of the decision making process.
Thank you.
This is Lindsay again.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
My concern with that is that if other businesses have received other grants, other people have vetted them, that these are businesses that are either important to or viable, mean, if you got PPP, does that mean that you shouldn't get this? And furthermore, like PPP wasn't even nearly this restrictive. So I would have a hard time if we have a successful, great operator downtown and they're really struggling and they got PPP, they should still be able to get their share of this pot of money, in my opinion. So.
Thank you. Other comments? So we have not seen any additional comments. We have a motion that's been offered by Lindsay and supported by Luke. Does anyone want to speak to that main motion and before we vote on it?
I guess my thought is if we don't ask them about their economic distress and their working capital needs, we got to get rid of those 60 points and put them somewhere else. And that's what's got to go hand in hand with Lindsay's proposal.
And should we ask the folks who are going to administer this? I mean, if there's no way to discern between this, I mean, is it okay just to pull this stuff out and have it by, I guess, the name or type of business, or I just think that having something say that they have some need and what those needs are seems a way of discerning between businesses. If someone has a very dire need, if someone has a very basic need, it seems kind of important to know, but
it's critical.
I'm sorry, but is it more important than the uniqueness of product or service offering or the community impact or history of the downtown? Because those are 25 and 15 points, but we're putting working capital needs at 30 and economic distress at 30. I would
well, yeah, because this might put someone out of business. Distress is putting someone out of business. What a nice product they have is important. But if they're not in business, it doesn't matter. So I think the financial level of distress is critical. It seems to be a basic functioning thing like breathing.
So we're giving priority to the least, the business that are struggling, but not possibly the businesses that have the biggest impact in our community.
Yes.
We don't know how long this is going to go on. Yeah, well, as a business owner, I think I have a problem.
But Lindsay, when you're saying you're saying that somebody that is unique has a bigger impact, and uniqueness is a qualitative thing. If we're going to try and allocate a small amount of money, in my opinion, we have to make it have the most impact on whether they exist, and there has to be some kind of.
I get that, but you're putting someone who might be equal or who might be just slightly less distressed, who's been here for 50 years at a lower priority than someone that might have more distress, but has been here for 5.
That's right.
Yeah, and I have a problem with that. Is if someone who's actually has a business in this town, the people who've made a long-term investment here really, really, really matter. And that should be higher than your economic, I just think that should be higher than your economic distress.
What you're talking about is just reallocating the points. So leave economic distress there, but have it have fewer points and have the length of time in the community have more points.
I think your uniqueness, your service offering, and your community impact and history in the downtown should be the highest point earners. I do.
So that would be a different amendment.
Well, I'd like to speak to that because I brought that up at the advisory committee meeting. And I thought similar along the lines of what Lindsay is suggesting, that we have businesses that have been paying into the DDA for a long time. We also have the experience of businesses that change over with some frequency along Grand River. And so when Dylan referenced earlier the changes that were made, we combined a couple different categories to increase points for the community impact and history in downtown. I think it was originally at 10 points and we bumped it up to 25. But I think the conversation we're having now, we have to arrive at some level of consensus as far as how to allocate these points and give the judging process enough of a base by which they can make an evaluation. So if it's I don't know if we're necessarily changing categories entirely, but we may be awarding points different than as they're proposed presently. So I'll just say that, and if anyone has comments on that.
Just to move it forward, I would propose that we drop the working capital needs, take financial distress, make it 40, make the community history 30, and make uniqueness 30. That gets those two at 60 and the distress at 40.
I think that's a good compromise.
This is
I
Lindsay.
can live with that.
I'll accept that friendly amendment if that's a friendly amendment.
That's so friendly.
It's very
Don't think
friendly.
we're voting on that
I'll
yet?
accept that.
Hmm?
I'll accept it as an amendment to my
Luke.
original motion that was supported by Luke.
Luke, you had a point?
Yeah, my point is that we veered off course and we are now discussing a draft of a document that is not actually what we're voting on right now.
No, we're talking about page 2 and the criteria under that with the application scoring criteria.
Correct, but I believe that your
Was to take these two.
right, because sorry, we are definitely getting mixed up on what we are talking about.
Okay, I'm sorry, Luke. We are jumping around a little bit. So the conversation that we have been, the path we're on is reevaluating the criteria and whether or not we have the appropriate allocation of points. And with those changes, then we will go back to to Lindsay's motion, which you seconded, as far as the requirements of 2, 3, and 4. We're trying to make certain that we get the point schedule appropriate.
Right, I just think we need to be clear on the motions and what documents they pertain to.
Right, so it is a friendly amendment of a revision of the point distribution that Jill has offered. And then we can go back to the main motion, which Lindsay offered and you seconded.
Yes, but the main motion is on the application, not the, or excuse me, on the business relief program, not the application final draft. So
No.
I don't believe that we can have a friendly amendment on something that we're not actually voting on.
No, we are amending the business eligibility portion of the document. We are not voting on the entire grant program. We're changing it. And the way that we change 2, 3, and 4 is by looking at the allocation of points. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I just don't think the order of operations are there, but I could be wrong.
I'm welcome staff or others to weigh in. I think I'm following the discussion.
So if I may,
Yes.
Chair. So my understanding of the current motion on the floor is all relative to the LEAP document, the eligibility application scoring criteria, and that there's a motion to remove on page 1 criteria number 3 and 4 as requirements, and move number 3 into a statement into this document, and then subsequently into the application as well. And then further to change on page 2 the scoring criteria in the following way: removing working capital altogether, moving economic distress to 40 points, moving community impact history and downtown to 30 points, and moving uniqueness of product and service offering to 30 points. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
That is the correct way that I want the motion to go with Jill's recommendations. If I have it continued second from Luke.
Continue.
So we have a friendly amendment that's been proposed. And I thought I heard Luke seconded your
Yes.
acceptance of that friendly amendment. Okay.
Can I make another friendly amendment that we get these teams correct too? Get rid of the MSU and the 2 large business communities, which had been dropped before.
Yeah.
Correct, Heather? Yeah.
Yeah.
So stage 1 would just be 3 LEAP members, 2 small business, 1 Michigan Works, period.
It'd be 4 LEAP, 2
Yeah,
small
okay.
business, 2 Michigan Works.
Okay.
Yeah, Heather should have it.
All right.
Is that in East Lansing?
Chair,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
I'm just, I'd also just put for your entertainment on this motion some other things that I heard that might be acceptable to the maker and the seconder. One would be to add an additional eligibility requirement, which is that business must intend to reopen your business. And then also, I noticed under next steps for awarded business, a change that we just became aware of. Awardees would not need to fill out the vendor form. So redacting that reference on page 3 as well. I'm just wondering if the maker and seconder would be amenable to adding that as well.
I honestly feel uncomfortable saying that they intend to reopen. I just think that that's kind of like everyone who has a business wants to reopen. I just think it's really, it just shows, to me, it gives this perception that we really don't understand why people go into small business. And I think that East Lansing has a reputation for that, and I don't want to add to that. So I would not be supportive of that because people don't just want to close up shop.
Peter, this is
Go-
Mayor
yeah.
Vi.
Yes, Mayor.
I agree with Lindsay, but for a different reason. To me, it doesn't matter. These businesses were in town. They did their best. They tried, and then COVID wiped them out. If that happens, everybody, like Lindsay said, everybody wants to reopen, and they might know right now that they are not going to be able to, and this will keep them from being homeless for a couple months. So I know what you were getting at, Mr. Lahanis, and I agree. It would be best if people tried to reopen, but I think they'll try to do that without us saying they have to.
I'm fine with that. I was just trying to answer to Greg's question, but something I could come up with as a compromise, but I'm fine with either way.
Yeah,
No hard
if I
feelings
could,
from me.
yeah, no, if I could comment on that, Greg Ballline.
Go ahead, Greg.
Thank you. I guess my intent is that, I found out this afternoon that a business in the community is not going to reopen. I know that for a fact. And of course, I can't share that information with anybody. It's not my business to share that with anybody. What I was trying to avoid is somebody who isn't going to reopen for business, has no intention of reopening for business, applying for funds, being eligible for funds, and taking funds from the small businesses in the DDA. Now, I also see both sides. I see Jeff's side that what's it matter? They've all been affected by COVID, and I'm torn with this. I really don't know where I stand on it now. I mean, I see both sides of the picture.
Yeah, this is Jeff, and it may be as simple as a statement acceptance that I completely understand where you're coming from. I don't want to send funds out, and Luke suggesting that he's not going to apply for these funds is killing me, thinking that companies like his may not. And I know everybody needs it. It may be as simple as a statement, either at the front end or at the back end of the application, suggesting that, yes, I am almost like an affidavit, but not an affidavit. I am still in business. I do intend on continuing my business moving forward in the downtown. But it doesn't have to be that we're, that there's a punitive action involved.
I second that.
Are there additional comments? So, you know, a lot of really great points are being made. We didn't address the item of removing the vendor form. Are the motioner and seconder in support of that being included in the revision? Lindsay, or?
I'm sorry, can you repeat what you just said? I had someone interrupting me.
Yeah, so we're trying to arrive at the items that Tom addressed that are going to be incorporated in the motion that has been offered as a friendly amendment, and the kind of the cleanup language of removing the requirement for a vendor form. Are you comfortable with that?
Yep.
Okay.
I
Are there any other?
I don't want
I'm
that
sorry.
one about them. I don't want the thing about them wanting to leave or wanting the reopening thing. I don't want, but
Yeah, no, I understand.
I'm okay to the other one.
Any other revisions?
Well, I did have a question, if I may, Peter, and it was really a question pointed at Tom Yaden. I'm completely unfamiliar with FOIA and what the guidelines are. From the aspect of, I know that in private business, it's completely appropriate to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. And I'm just trying to avoid uncomfortableness on the part of businesses to disclose information that they deem personal and have them not apply for this when we want them to apply for this. That's kind of, and I'm wondering if an NDA accomplishes our goal, or is it just because we're a public body, it just is what it is?
Yeah, we can't operate with a non-disclosure agreement. Like I said, the Freedom of Information Act allows confidential information under very limited circumstances, which wouldn't be applicable to these situations. So you either have to not ask for the information or just have it provided to some third party, but that's the only way you can avoid the disclosure requirements under the Freedom of Information Act.
Thank you, Tom.
Sure.
And Greg, if we drop that working capital section, that's a lot of that stuff that you're talking about.
Yeah, okay.
If we just
All
do
right.
the
Well,
distress, all they got to do is compare their revenue a year ago and their revenue now and what their difference in employees is.
okay. Well, I want this to be accessible to people. I want them to be able to apply for it without sharing their information in a very public way. I just think it's important that people know we're looking out for them in a lot of different ways.
Thank you.
I would also like to say that I second that, because this is the money that they've paid in. I think that really needs to be very clear that this is money that these companies pay into our community. It's so, you know, it's not like it's just someone else's money that came out. This is money they paid in that they should have access to.
Good point.
This is Jeff.
Go ahead, Jeff.
You know, I in a caution to make us way diverted from the motion, I want to just make sure, Dylan, you know, the changes that we're talking about here, will the applicants know what the criteria, what the reviewer's criteria looks like? In other words, I may fill this application out and not hit all the points that the reviewers are looking for simply because I don't know that one of the categories is heavily weighted in one way or another, or even a category in the review process. If we strike things from the review side or the applicant side, will the applicant know the line of sight on the other side?
Yep. So that's, and they reminded at the very front page of the application to review the documentation that's placed on the website. It would be this document that we're reviewing, and the frequently asked questions discusses it as well. But they have, you know, assuming, you know, going forward, they have the weekend, Monday and Tuesday morning to understand the scoring criteria and how it's weighted. and are reminded before they start the application of what is going to be looked at.
Okay.
Okay.
I had one other question, Peter, if you don't mind, Luke.
Yes, please, Luke.
I don't know if I even call it a question. I guess I'm just, when I go through it, I am a little concerned with the economic distress and the points allowed. And as far as, I guess I'm just curious how that's defined. Who would, how are we voting on that and how are we scoring that? If only because when I looked at the winners of LEAP's previous application, I didn't feel like that necessarily rang true to me. And I, of course, could be absolutely wrong, but it seemed like a majority of the businesses were places that weren't actually forced to close. It seemed like a number of them were nonprofits, and I think that a lot of nonprofit funding probably didn't change because of COVID. I'm sure they already got the money that they would be receiving from various other grants for the year. Again, could be wrong on that. But there was there was just a number of things like that got me wondering how we were concerned.
Thank you, Luke. Dylan, can you weigh in on that?
Yeah, I want to try to find the number of nonprofits. I don't recall that being very high, but
no, it wasn't high. I said that I felt like it was majority businesses that weren't closed, but there were nonprofits, and even that to me suggests maybe a flaw in the system.
For sure. Yeah, well, we'll keep in mind this was the end of March, and people were trying, and they were trying to stay open. In terms of how the economic distress was scored, just kind of imagine, you start at, in the middle at 15, and then you look at percent change year over year or month over month in both revenue and employees, and you compare that, or you combine that rather, with some of the narrative elements as well in terms of the impact. So I mean, most scores started in the middle and went up or down from there. But as you guys, kind of a common theme here, I mean, many experience economic distress. So there's not too much variance up there, but it's important to look at the percent change in those financials to see how they're doing.
Thank you. Are there additional questions or comments? I'd like to go back to the motion that we have, if there are no additional questions or comments. And Tom, I know you've already gone through it once, but can you just quickly summarize the motion that we'll be voting on?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So again, this is in relation to just the LEAP document, the business eligibility application scoring criteria and review process. The motion is to remove items 3 and 4 on page 1, convert item 3 to a statement on both the this document as well as into the application. And on page 2, change the scoring criteria in the following way: remove working capital need altogether, increase economic distress to a total of 40 points, increase community impact history in downtown to a total of 30 points, increase uniqueness of product, service, and offering to a total of 30 points. Further, eliminate the references to MSU as the reviewers in stage 1 or stage 2, and remove references on page 3 to the East Lansing vendor form.
Great, thank you. All right, one last chance. Anyone wish to speak on the motion that Tom has revised and reviewed for us? Seeing none, I'll have Chad call the roll call, please.
Ballline,
Yes.
Mayor Byer,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Kroom,
Yes.
Diwan,
Yes.
Acne,
Yes.
Kruger,
He's recused.
Kruger is
He's recused.
he's recused.
Thank you.
Recused, unfortunately.
Thank you. Lahanas,
Yes.
Rhodey,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. So now we have made revisions to the business eligibility. Are there additional actions the board wishes to take? Or would we entertain a motion on the program?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the East Lansing Downtown Development Authority Business Relief Program grants.
I believe we already have that.
Been moved.
You already have that motion seconded.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So any further discussion?
So this is Lindsay. Are we going through,
Yep.
we're not gonna go through this, or we are?
We are.
Okay. Well, then,
You can speak to that motion.
I would like to start
Can
by,
I-
yep.
I'm just want to make sure we're still just discussing the actual program eligibility, application scoring criteria and review process. And then is that correct? Or are we also looking at the application at this point?
I thought we were looking at the application now.
No,
So we're done with the other part. We're going on to application.
Oh, okay, sorry, I got ahead of us.
Well, Lindsay, why
Yep.
don't you go ahead with, say
Nope.
you have an application.
Let's just keep going.
Well, don't we need to approve the program before we start looking at the application, so we know what to put in it?
That's George's, he already made that motion and it was supported.
Yeah, okay, so we need to vote on
All
it.
right. Well, so we are voting on the acceptance of the program. And we can drill down into the application following that. Is that acceptable? Tom?
Yes.
Okay. So Chad, if you will call the roll call.
Ballline,
Yes.
Mayor Byer,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Kroom,
Yes.
Diwan,
Yes.
Hackney,
Still don't think this is a good use of our funds, so voting no.
Lahanas,
Yes.
Rhodey,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Passes it at 8-1.
Okay. Now, is the board wanting to make further revisions to the application itself, or offer at least comments about the application?
Am I
Hello,
able to
can you-
unrecuse myself since
Tom?
the vote has happened?
No,
Tom?
that's still part of the same process.
Okay.
Didn't unrecuse yourself.
Out of
Mike probably doesn't
curiosity,
have to be here at this point.
Lindsay, I have a question. I thought in the past we've allowed people to stay for the discussion, but not the vote. I just feel like his voice is a very valuable voice in this process. And if there's any way that we can have Mike's input and maybe not have him vote and not have him vote, that's fine. But I would like to hear his feedback on these things.
That's
Tom
in
Yaden.
contravention of your, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Tom, I'm sorry. Just go ahead and speak to that, please.
Lindsay, that's in contravention of your bylaws. They say you can't be involved in the discussions either.
Okay. I can't turn off my video.
Thank you. So Michael, we will invite you back in when we're able to. Is there anyone wishing to offer additional comments about either the program or the application process, or make revisions to the application, or and direct staff to further refine the application and bring it back to the DDA?
Can I ask a question, Peter?
Yes. Tom, go ahead.
So
Go ahead.
I think I've heard a number of comments regarding the application, and one that's important, I think, for staff to get direction on and guidance is related to really the demonstration of economic distress, which is now a 40-point review category item. And in the LEAP document on page 2, it says that the application asks numerous financially driven questions to portray the hardship endured. Examples include detailing the difference in full-time employees, et cetera, et cetera. Is there still a desire to include those types of questions in the application? And if not, I think it would be appropriate to amend this language in page 2 of the LEAP document.
I think, and Dylan can correct me, but questions 23 through 30 could be what you, and a plus and little narrative, could be what's used to determine the distress without them having to report a lot of personal information.
Yeah, so 23 through 30 are essential, absolutely essential. Now you may want to pick and choose if you're still worried, but that's really the only objective way you can look at the impact of COVID-19 on a business.
And if we just
Dylan,
ask
this
for
is
that,
Jeff. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, if we just asked for that, we wouldn't have to ask, do you own the building? That would be, how worse off are you than March 1st?
The building's an interesting one, if you want me to answer that right now. So we asked, let me scroll down or scroll up. So we ask, are you the owner of the business for the main reason of duplication? So we actually found out in the original process that, say like a business manager is the one applying, but one business owner may be a business owner of 6 downtown businesses, and he or she has 6 different applications in via his businesses, but we can't see that without that question. Building owner is kind of in that same way. You probably can go without it. Yeah, what else am I missing, Jill? I cut you off, Jeff, too, as well.
Jeff, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was actually going to just suggest, if it's possible, could in the application process you rank the need or rank the situation? I know that there are some nuances in here that you kind of have to know, the actual answer. But if they were to, if it's a sliding scale that allows the applicant to input information in a quantitative way without divulging any, sensitive information, maybe some of these application questions.
Yeah, it's like employees 0 to 5 or 6 to 10, 10 to 25. Is that what you're kind of talking about?
Yeah. Okay. That way they don't have to get too on the nose with it, because I would run into this situation if I were applying, do interns count? And I know all of that stuff is spelled out, but that you start getting into a lot of questions and people's minds are cloudy on other things already. So just making it as easy as possible, I think.
Peter, this is Heather.
Go ahead, Heather.
If I could just add, I think maybe it would be helpful if we did the same thing with this document that we did with the original document. We go through, there's probably a number of things that we can skip over, but go through and some of the items that the board wants to discuss, we can work that out so that staff can make these changes and get this application ready to go quickly. I think that would be helpful for staff and helpful for the board to put down what they want to see on this application.
So is your recommendation we just go through the application line by line or what?
Yes, and I think that makes sense. It seems like we're jumping around a little bit right now, and I think that people are talking about the same thing, but there might be some confusion of what category we're working on. So if we could do that, I think it would be helpful.
All right, well, why don't we just start at the first question? Is this a brick and mortar business located within the DDA district? Is there any objection about keeping that in? So we will keep that in. Has your business been directly affected by the executive order? Presumably these are all answerable questions, so I don't know how that's objectionable. Likely everyone that applies is going to say yes, so I have no problem keeping that in the document. Question 3, has your business experienced significant financial damage, specifically due to COVID-19 pandemic or related executive orders? Likely everyone's going to answer yes. I don't see how it's objectionable to have it in the document unless someone else has an opinion, and please weigh in if you do. Item 4, can your business demonstrate need for working capital such as payroll expenses, rent or mortgage payments, utility expenses, or other similar expenses that occur in the ordinary course of business? Are there?
I think that should be eliminated since we eliminated it as a criteria.
This is Lindsay, and
Go ahead,
I directly have a significant problem with that one.
Yeah. We dropped it from the criteria, so we should drop it from here. That's my thought.
Because that is specifically what is FOIA-able in the other documents.
Sure.
So I would like to
All
strike.
right. Well, we're going to go through the whole document, so we'll make a note to strike item number 4, unless anyone has a contrary opinion. Let's move on to question 5. Was your business delinquent on any accounts, fees, and tax assessments prior to the city's emergency order related to the COVID-19 pandemic? Is there objections about leaving that in the document? Seeing none, we'll move on to applicant acknowledgments and agreements. This seems to be somewhat boilerplate language, but we'll go through each one. A, that all questions in this application have been answered truthfully. No problem with that. B, that information provided in this application is public knowledge in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act. It seems to me that there's a question, if this is given to a third party, is it FOIA-able? And I don't know if, I've heard a couple different responses, and I'm sorry to have you reiterate, Tommy Aiden, but if this application is being processed by a third party that's not FOIA-able, is this a relevant statement to have in the app?
Well, is the DDA planning on reviewing the applications?
We have a process, phase 1 and 2, where there are identified parties that are serving in an advisory role to the DDA that will judge the applications and then report back to us the list of people based upon the criteria we established.
And they're not being mailed to the city at all, right? The mailing or the website is all going to be seen only by LEAP people?
Correct. We will have on our website, the city's website, we'll have information, but it all goes back to LEAP.
Okay.
Back to application goes to LEAP.
But then I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead, Tom. The question is, given the construct of the application going to LEAP and providing the evaluation with the phase 1 and 2, is there a requirement to have item B in this document that it's complying with the Freedom of Information Act when LEAP is not FOIAble.
Well, LEAP isn't, but my concern is the subcommittees that you've created to review the applications would be subject to FOIA.
But there's no DDA members on it. It's all outside people. It's LEAP, it's a Small Business Development Center, and it's Capital Area Michigan Works.
Selected by the DDA. I think
and
we're getting
staff?
in hot water. If
Yeah. My biggest issue is that they're actually going to the city's website to get the information. That to me seems troublesome.
It's also staff is going to be reviewing those, correct?
No. Staff from LEAP. I think our expectation from the discussions that were had at the committee level was that the intent, at least from the committee, was to have the review happen from this expert panel of these three organizations, and for them to whittle down the list to the final 100, and then make a recommendation for funding to the DDA for those 100 companies. And the DDA then would meet and decide yes or no on the list.
But what comes back with the recommendations? What is the DDA going to use to determine whether those recommendations are appropriate from the committee?
Presumably the scoring criteria that was applied by the committee of experts.
The number of points. All we would see is the number of points they've been awarded.
Well, I have concerns about that process too, because it seems like, well, if the DDA is simply going to be looking at the number of points, then LEAP is making the decisions then, right?
No, it's bringing back a list of recommendations. These are the 100 we think it should be, and then we vote up yes or no. They're not
But
making
I'm
the
just
decision,
saying,
they're making the recommendation.
yeah, but if all you have is points in front of you to look at, and you don't have any basis to evaluate whether they were given a correct number of points, how would you decide that someone with lesser points was more deserving than someone with greater points?
That's why we're contracting out, so that we're not the ones making, I mean, that's exactly why it's contracted out.
But I guess what I'm
So
saying
they can come
is
back with a recommendation.
But is it truly a recommendation at that point then, if you don't have anything to look at to determine whether they're, what would be the alternates? How would you determine that their recommendation was inappropriate in some fashion?
Hey, Tom, Greg Ballline. Would it be appropriate maybe if we came up with assigning a couple people to review the applications and the scoring process at LEAP's facility, obviously with no documents to leave there? I mean, I don't know how somebody could FOIA me for doing that. I mean, is that appropriate also for us to go in and review and say, yes, we agree with your decisions that you're going to put forth to the DDA?
It can be. I mean, the city used that process when we evaluated the financial criteria for selling the Evergreen properties many years ago, where, myself and the finance director went and reviewed the financial documents for this very reason. But I guess what I'm concerned about, though, is in this situation, it appears that you're giving your authority that LEAP is the decision-making body, which is okay, I guess, in some respects, but I don't know what you would be voting on.
May I just ask that instead of work, I mean, I think that the FOIA isn't as scary to me if we're not asking for very, very, very specific business information that really is not the intent of this at all. Our intent, and I think for, especially if you talk to any of us that own businesses in this community, a lot of us really just wanted to, you know, give it all equally. Give it to, you know, if you have the business in the downtown, you have a brick and mortar business, like, let's just cut the pie up and give it to people. Now, there was some concern about that. So a few of us went ahead and said, okay, we'll go ahead with this. And with the subcommittee that doesn't have any small business owners on it and whatnot. And then we get this packet of information that has a lot of information that is very private to business owners. So I think that we could easily resolve this and have the shorter meeting if we just said some of this criteria does not need to be in here. It's not in the spirit of what we're doing. And I'm done with that.
And if I could
Would
type
it be-
in again one more time, Peter.
Go ahead.
The additional concern that is raised is that by giving LEAP or some other body this authority to issue these grants or to divvy up these grants, you're creating another public body, somebody with, you know, what that you're giving your governmental authority to, and then that body might then become subject to the Open Meetings Act. The subcommittees and bodies like that are generally supposed to be advisory, which I think is how you've tried to set this up. But if the DDA doesn't have anything to, you know, review the criteria by once they get the advice from this subcommittee, then they're not really advisory. They're making the decision, and that's my concern. The city got into some trouble many years ago with the HBC, the Hannah Building Committee, when they gave the committee a bunch of authority to go out and do something, and so it's a little concerning to me that this sounds like it's more than just an advisory committee, because you're not, if this committee gives somebody 100 points and the next person 98, and the line is drawn at 100 for grants, I don't know what criteria you would use to change that 98 to 100 to make that point system truly a advisory system rather than a decision-making system. Are you following my concerns?
But that's what we've just spent the last 2 hours, is writing that criteria for them to use. They're going to use that criteria. They're going to come up with who they recommend is the 100, bring it. We're going to look at it. And as long as there's nobody on it that we think there's an issue with, we're going to take it as a recommendation and vote on this list, yes or no, to approve them as a grantor. We're not giving away our right, them the right to pick. We're going
Can
to
we
give them the
simplify-
criteria they're going to use to make a recommendation.
Can
Go
we
ahead,
just ask
George.
Mr. Yaden if there's a process that we can do that's similar to what Jill is saying? What tweaks do we have to make what Jill is saying possible? Is it including the underlying data that after we've taken out some of that more objectionable data, maybe we're okay with that being as a part of the list? And then we don't have a full up and down vote on the whole thing. We just say that we actually have to approve the list, and hopefully we don't change it, but we can say that we can change it. If we find something crazy, we just say, whoa, this is not right. We move some around, but you know, ideally we're not going to do that. We're going to accept the recommendation, but just include all the data. You know, that's what I'm trying to get at, Tom. What can we do to tweak this process so we can just make it permissible and make it work for us?
Well, my understanding was that you were going to get the applications back with the recommendations, and that you would make kind of an independent review of whether they applied the data correctly and whether their recommendations are correct, and then vote on that. But my concern was without getting the applications back, you don't have anything to base your review on. So that's where the disconnect was for me. I was assuming you were getting the applications back, and that's why I was assuming that they'd be subject to FOIA.
So let's just say we're all okay with that. Is there a reason we're not? Because Lindsay had an objection to that specific financial data, but we're taking that section, that one level of data out. Are we okay with the fact that we've taken out the most objectionable data? We can get the applications back. That'll all be public.
That I'm sure my concern is just echoed by anyone else. I don't want any business owner to feel precluded from participating. And you know, if they're more inclined to participate without all the confidential data, then that's great.
Yeah, and if the only financial questions we're asking is that 23 through 30, again, I don't know how that would be offensive or secret or something you wouldn't want out. So, I mean, I don't think saying that it is still subject to FOIA, which you'd want to say, you know, if there's any doubt at all, we want to let them know. So to keep it in there. If it's even questionable, we should keep it in there.
Okay, so I have a question. Which items are we taking out then? I'm sorry, this is what question, which numbers are we removing? And is there a motion to remove them?
We were going through the entire document and we were at
I know that.
Okay. So the question that we were discussing was item 5B, and it sounds like after a rather extensive conversation, there's no objection to leaving the Freedom of Information Act as part of the criteria because we're removing confidential data that a business owner likely would not want to submit.
Well, and I am totally okay with that. This is Lindsay. I am fine with that. I just want to make sure that we're removing all of that financial information. So let's go through which ones we want to remove.
Right. Her point is we don't want to say that unless we've decided we're going to get rid of some of this stuff, like 31, like 21. See, that's the point. And we got to know that we're dropping it so that we know that it's going to be clean to say it's okay to FOIA it.
Right. So
why don't we just finish the process?
Let's continue on through the document with the understanding that we're leaving B in, and then we'll address the ideas or the items that maybe we wish to remove when we get to those items in the document. It appears to me that we will remove item C because we've already deleted the requirement for a vendor form. So if you could make a designation, Tom or Heather, that we will go back through the document one more time and talk about items that we're going to remove. Item D, if awarded, to provide to DDA W-9 completed and signed within 24 hours of award. Is there an objection about leaving that in? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item E, if awarded, that the business may be identified to the public in press releases and understand that application materials and any other items submitted may be subject to release under the Freedom of Information Act. Again, we've already made the determination that the Freedom of Information Act is applicable, and so I presume we are leaving letter E in. F, if awarded, that the business will agree to spend the funds on immediate working capital needs only. I think earlier in our conversations, we suggested that we would remove that. Is that in agreement?
Yes.
Okay. So if you could highlight that one as well. Item G, if awarded, the business will agree to submit monthly report to the DDA for the next 6 months, even after money is spent. I'm not of the opinion that that's necessary, but I would strike to remove that unless there's a reason why we need to include it.
Hey, Peter, Luke has his hand raised.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. And again, I'm not able to see you guys, so you'll just have to step up and offer your comments.
Luke, this is Peter. Or Peter, this is Luke. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I agree. I just somebody kept muting me, so I was trying to be polite.
Oh, okay. Item 6, I have read and agreed to the terms and conditions of the award as described above. Type your first and last name acknowledgement. So we go through 7, 8, 9, 10. That all seems fairly standard. 11, 12. I don't see any objections to, unless anyone feels there is an objection. Please state it now. Item
Chair,
13.
Chair.
Yes.
This is Dylan. Can I just stop you for a sec? Going back to the acknowledgments, I'm just looking at my notes. Perhaps, if I can't quite recall what the board decided upon, if there was going to be a question about, I guess rather a statement for an intent to reopen business, that you just put it in the acknowledgement section up front, rather than way at the end.
This is Luke. I believe that we decided not to do that.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. Staff will make a note. Anything else, Dylan?
Nope, charge ahead.
All right, we're going to keep going ahead. No objections to business street address and number, item 13.
I have a question about 12.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
I have a question about 12. Am I missing something? Oh, I guess development would be considered landlord. Sorry, I just want to make sure we had landlords included in that. But go on.
Okay, thank you. Item 13. Is this, I don't know how this contributes to the evaluation process, if it needs to be included. I'm sure it's not a big deal, but 14, do you have just this one location or more?
I want to talk to 13. 13, I mean, people don't just have that. They'd have to dig that up. I mean, what is the purpose for the parcel number? Make it easier for you guys to check the delinquencies?
I can answer that. So there's a statement in here saying that were current with all their accounts and they weren't delinquent with the city prior to COVID-19.
Right.
And so we would search that by parcel number. We would review that. And so if they have that information, that's fine. If they don't, that's something we can look up. So we put that in there, but if you feel it should be removed, we can remove it.
Maybe we should just say 13, this if available.
Okay.
You'd have to find your property tax bill, or you'd have to, I mean, that's just not something somebody knows.
I'm good with removing it, but if available is acceptable to me as well.
Because it will help. It will help the treasurer's office look the stuff up if they have it. But
right.
This is Lindsay, but can't you just go on the city website under property search? That's super easy.
So you could, and we could put a link there to
Yes,
the
can you put a link there?
Oh yeah, put the link in. That's good.
There.
Okay, there you go.
All right. Item number 14, do you have just this one location or more?
Is this an important question to have? I just felt like it was a little bit redundant. Like, I mean, why does it matter if you have more than one business in East Lansing? Do you get scored higher if you have more than one business? Or are you being scored lower? I mean, for me, I read that and I was like, why does it matter? It seems pointless, but that was just my personal opinion.
Well, I think, go ahead, Dylan.
It was more relevant when working capital was required, because we needed to see where the funds would be going. Which business location, brick and mortar location.
But don't we already, I'm sorry, this is Lindsay again. Don't we already say, there's another spot where we say it has to, if you have more than one business, it has to be, one per location, but couldn't we just say somewhere in one of the other requirements that it has to be used at your DDA business?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
So I just think I think there's a better way to do this. but and not have, I don't think we need to, I don't know. That's just my opinion though.
We'll tidy that up.
Okay.
Yeah, let's tighten that up, please. Item 15, how long has this business existed? It's I don't know why we
Just a
need
quick
both
question,
15.
Chair.
Yes, go ahead, George.
Just a quick question. So I couldn't unmic quick enough. So if someone has multiple businesses, can one owner get 2 or 3 allocations of money for multiple businesses? And wouldn't we want to know that just to know? I mean, would we know that, I guess? Because then if someone hasn't gotten anything, maybe we'd want another business to get their first shot at it before someone gets 2 shots at it. And I'm not sure if that's a practical problem or not. Maybe it's not an issue because their name would be on the application or anything like that. But I think it'd be useful to know if one business is getting more than one application. They may be entitled to it if there's a good justification, but shouldn't we know that?
Yeah.
I thought
So
Go ahead.
the business would still have to do 2 applications, and we would see that in the vetting process pretty easily alphabetically. But that's something to consider for sure in the review criteria. If you want to just spread the love out more. What's really tricky is if it's 2 different businesses owned by the same owner. That's a different question.
Yeah, Luke Hagney, if I could ask everyone that,
Mhm.
how do we feel about that idea? I could be mistaken. As far as I knew, on the initial LEAP grant, there was actually two recipients that were the same owner.
Yes, there were.
And I don't know if I think that's a good idea or not. I think that's fair. I guess I'm not entirely sure if I agree with myself on that, but that is something I would love to know what everybody else's thought was.
It was 2 separate businesses owned by the same person,
Correct. So in essence, one person or persons got $20,000.
which were applicable to 2 different ballot state sheets, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, to me, they would both be eligible. They are 2 separate businesses.
This is Lindsay. I think that when we're talking about business, their businesses are separate entities. And I think that we need to evaluate them as such. So I think that each business is its own business, and that should be our criteria, personally.
Right.
Joe?
Could we replace it with, are you applying for a grant for another business within the DDA? If yes, which business? So at least we know.
I would support that. This is Lindsay.
I think it's good. I support that.
Eliminate the whole thing and
Maybe a
replace it with that.
Way to do it.
But I have a question. Is that going to look negatively on their application?
It's better than having to go through the ownership and try to find out how many they've applied for. At least they're telling you right here.
Yeah. Well, if we could have staff correct that. Was there
I think
another question about that subject?
I was going to say, I think that's to Luke's point. I think it's in the eye of the beholder type of review. You may get a reviewer that finds that that's an issue, some that won't. But at least it's, it's in the numbers and it'll bake itself out in the total.
Okay. We'll move on to item 15. Are both 15 and 16 necessary, or can we just simply have one question that says, how long has this business existed in the DDA? Because these are money's going to DDA businesses.
So we added that whole area all the way to Hagedorn. This is Lindsay. Probably like 15 years ago. And we have some businesses like Prime Housing that's been there forever. And So they would, if you did this based on the DDA boundaries, I think that they would be at an unfair advantage. So I would like to say, how long have you been in East Lansing?
Okay,
I think that's only fair since our boundary has changed over time.
it's really getting to the allocation of points as far as the history of the business in East Lansing.
Exactly. So
Okay.
I would like to strike it and just eliminate 6 and have how long has this business existed or existed in East Lansing. I'm just more interested in how long it's been around, but if you want to specify East Lansing, then you're also getting into the fact that I don't know when we added parts of our downtown into East Lansing, but I think that we should probably just keep it as how long as it had existed.
I'm good with that. Any objections to removing item 16? Okay, we'll move on to business ownership. Item 17, 18, 19. Any objections to either 17 or 18 or 19?
Well, I think 19 has to go.
Okay,
I mean, you can ask if they own the business, but whether they have a mortgage on it or not, I mean, that's all irrelevant.
right.
I mean, you want to
Okay.
ask the first part of the question, I guess that's okay, but.
If I may, as a reviewer of the first go around on this, how I took that information, and it wasn't detailed. I didn't know who they had the mortgage with or who, whatever it was. Is this a building owner also occupied by the business operator? And is the mortgage paid off? For me, if I'm reviewing and I know that somebody's about to lose a building that they've been in for 15 years and they own it, like, I don't know if Curious Bookshop owns this building or not, but if it's one of those situations where he's about to lose Curious Bookshop, that ranks higher for me. That was how I took it as a reviewer, just so everybody's aware.
This is Lindsay. Then can we make that an optional question where like you will not be negatively, and maybe have that explanation. Like we're asking this question because, we really want to make sure that we help the people who might have to be paying rent to someone. That's fine. I just want to make sure that it's very clear that we're not trying to figure out all our details.
How about, do you own the building? If so, is there a mortgage? Period. When will it be paid off or any of that stuff?
Well, a lot of businesses do land contracts too. So I think that, I understand the differentiation between a land like having that here. So I think giving people the option to actually fill that out is probably better, in my opinion, but.
Luke, your thought on it?
No thoughts on that.
Is this question entirely imperative in the review process?
This is Diwan. The main purpose is kind of what Jeff talked about. If it's really a pain point for you guys, I don't think it'll substantively change the scoring criteria. It just helps paint a more clear picture.
When you're talking about financial need for these people though, if you're a business that owns your property outright, you're in a much better financial position to weather this than if you. And so from that standpoint, I get it. I'm much more worried about people who don't own their sites, but I think you need to give people the option of whether or not they want to disclose that.
All right, well, to the degree that we can make it a little bit easier and perhaps you make it an optional response, we can gather the detail if necessary. We'll just go on to item 20. If leasing, what is the first name of building owner, last name of building owner, phone number, email address, length of the lease term? Does anyone have objections to leaving all of that in? item 20A through E?
I just don't see the relevancy of any of it.
I can touch upon this one again. If it's too much heartburn, I don't think it'll be too much of an issue. But a lot of times, a business owner and the building owner may be the same person but have different entities. So we wanted just to discern that through this question.
I think we should eliminate the phone number and the email. That's irrelevant. And somebody else's personal information we're giving out on an application.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, so we'll strike items 20C and D, and E will be re-lettered C. We'll move on to question 20, the bankruptcy question.
Irrelevant.
I move we strike.
Irrelevant, right?
We move to strike question 21. Item 22, conflict of interest. That certainly should be remain as part of the application process.
Yeah, we just need to update the language to match so no Michigan State or business staff.
Right. Okay, now we're getting into the heart of these questions. Economic distress. Jill, I think you and Lindsay as well, please chime in. You had some comments about these items. Are there anything in particular that you'd like to address?
No, I think these are the appropriate questions. There's nothing there very, personal. Just how are you comparing to a year ago, and how are you comparing to 2 months ago? I think those are the questions we need to know. And again, I don't think there's anything inappropriately asked there.
Luke, if I could interject, I agree. I don't think anything's inappropriate. As a business owner standpoint, I would say that February revenue is completely irrelevant. Irrelevant to the question. Many businesses just don't operate that way. Like me being one of them, I make 80% more money in April than I do in February. So my February earnings would always be completely irrelevant to how little or how much money I make in March or April. Not that it matters. I don't care one way or another on this, but just a thought that a lot of businesses operate month to month.
Well,
frankly, especially in East Lansing, when it's winter and it's
maybe we adjust this to the East Lansing dynamic. Could we make it
sports going on? It's cold. Kids are just getting back. I mean, I think there's a number of things that would prohibit a business from making good money in February.
Well, the executive order from the governor was not applicable until March. So why are we asking for data from February?
Agreed. Yeah, that's also what I'm suggesting. Yes.
Okay. So if no one has any objections, let's just remove item number 27, and yet 23 through 30, with the exception of 27, would remain. Is that acceptable?
I do have one question about item number 24. If we have a business that got PPP, then they have brought back their staff. And so I think that it's kind of confusing for those. And so maybe we say like, put an asterisk there and say, ask if they did get PPP. And because that's going to make or break what that number looks like.
So Lindsay, per your suggestion, have item 24A where you are recipient of PPE.
PPP, yep.
Okay. Any other comments?
What do the other business owners think about that?
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I do think it's possibly true.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead. This is Greg Ballline. I just speaking as my one business owner, I believe that, I think that if somebody's received PPP funds, they have every intention of opening up for business. They have every intention of employing their staff. I think it's a good question.
Okay, any other comments?
I agree.
Okay, can we just?
So let's make that change. I'm sorry, Lindsay, did you have other items you wanted to address?
No, I just wish that there was someone else that had some knowledge about PPP that, but that's fine. Let's move on.
All right, so now we are on item 30. What is the current status of your business operation? Closed, partially closed, open, and operating as usual. I see of no objections of keeping that in. Item 31, working capital need. If you receive a grant, how will funds be applied? I think we can simply take out question 31 unless there's a reason why we need that for our scoring criteria. Anyone have objections if we remove item 31?
Can we, this is Lindsay again. I totally support that, but can we ask what Leap thinks or what Jeff Smith thinks?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I'll defer to Dylan.
Yeah. It's a different question now versus, previous, before this meeting, because the working capital is not really important anymore in terms of the eligibility. I think it is immensely useful to see what they plan to spend the money on. I mean, this is a business and we want to see how they want to spend this money in their business, especially even for reporting and then looking back on the impact made. But if it was not made as an eligible requirement, and you guys don't really, you're not scrutinizing how the money is being spent, then it's not going to relate to the scoring criteria, and probably doesn't need to be in there. I'm a fan of having the working capital in there.
The only challenge with it is just how do you verify it? It's really,
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
everybody could say the same thing.
For sure, and they got to sign that they're truthful in their responses,
Yeah.
and that's the best we have.
I know it. Yeah, that's the difficulty in that one.
Well, the businesses that are going to be applying could likely check off every one of these. So again,
Yeah.
I don't know how it's applicable to the review process.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just suggest we strike item 31.
Luke, please.
Go ahead, Luke. Okay.
I agree with you. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Item 32, describe the history of your business as it relates to downtown East Lansing. We've already talked about keeping that. 33, how does your business engage with the community in terms of special programs, events, philanthropy? I think that is, I'd like to include that unless there's some objections. It's what speaks to the fabric of our businesses downtown. Item 34, what makes your business well-liked by your customers, clients, employees, and partners? I think that is part of the narrative and should be included. And please interrupt me as I go through these if someone has a strong opinion about whether or not we should delete any of these items. Item 35, what makes your physical location meaningful to the neighborhood and broader community? It's kind of a harmless question and gives them an opportunity to share their impact in our downtown. Item 36, if your business were to cease operations, what other area of businesses would be most impacted? I think this is a helpful question. And again, I open up any comments on any of these, please offer them. Item 37, uniqueness of product service offering. What makes your business unique? We've already talked about it, keeping that as part of this. Item 38, what products or offerings differentiate your business from your competitors? Dylan, can you speak to the relevance of this question? Is it just for the uniqueness?
Yeah, so I mean, we kind of learned that people answer these either about their products or about their history, and they've been the only coffee shop in town, and then some we offer this X, Y, and Z product that you have to go to Indiana for to get. So they're naturally open-ended in that entire scoring process. criteria is going to be open-ended. So having both of the questions, both on like the company side wide thing and then more on a product is useful.
Okay. Not hearing anyone asking to strike that, we'll move on to other funding. Item 39, describe any other financial support programs you have pursued, are pursuing, or successfully secured at the local, state, or federal level. And we've had some discussion about this today. Anyone want to weigh in their comments about this item?
I would drop the I would
Sorry?
drop the pursuing part and just say, have you successfully secured? That would be my suggestion.
I'm fine with that, but it is good to know if they've gotten, you know,
If they've
a
gotten
lot of
it,
other money elsewhere. Yeah.
right, but if they're pursuing something, they don't
Yeah,
need to know
because
that.
just because
Then
they could be pursuing 20 things and you get zero of those things.
Exactly.
you get nothing. Yeah.
Right.
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that.
This is not going to keep them from getting this. They will not be excluded
No.
if they get PPP.
I still are my again, I guess I just need to reiterate that 100% of the business owners I've spoken with think that it should.
Okay. I mean, I can see getting some kind of priority to a few, but like, I think most of these people are trying to get PPP or have tried to get it or trying to get the second round.
Not a grant though. It's essentially a loan.
So say that again, Luke. 100% of the business owners you talk to say that the requirement should prohibit you from getting the funds?
Yes, if you've already received a grant, that you should be that you should not be able to even apply for this grant.
So this grant or any other grant?
This grant, because
Okay,
it's the only
gotcha.
grant I have any sort of.
Gotcha.
But then,
So Luke, can you tell me, George here, how many people downtown would have already gotten the PPP grant? Would there be a couple, any, none at all, or just a handful?
I'm only aware of one person that we just recused that has actually received the funds. I do know a number of people that have applied and gotten it, but have not gotten any money today yet, or they're still waiting. I don't think when people are discussing that with me that they're discussing PPP, if only because they don't see that as a grant. There's a lot of variables that could still essentially mean that you have to pay that money back. I mean, it is a loan. It's structured as a loan. It's a loan. It's through a bank. It's a loan.
Yeah.
but okay. But if we're talking about just the other LEAP grant, that there are what, 4 businesses in our DDA that got those.
Yes.
3 of those businesses have been in our DDA for as long as I can remember,
Okay.
if not more than my lifetime.
Okay.
And they have paid their fair share in. And I honestly can tell you that if those 4 came in front of me personally, I think that they would be very worthy recipients if we're, and meet the criteria. So
I'm not disagreeing with you, Lindsay. I'm just, as somebody that's actively continuously suggested that you want to hear what business owners have to say, that is what the business owners had to say. That's all I'm saying.
So I got a question then. So Lindsay, would you have a problem, like if it's told, and for instance, there's a splitting the difference between 2 businesses, one has already gotten $10,000 and one has got nothing. I would think that should come into play at that point. I don't think it would exclude the one who got something prior, but I think if it's a very close call, maybe that's something that pushes people over, because you wouldn't want to double down and give someone extra money when someone else has got no money. That's my view. I don't think it would exclude you, but I think it should be considered as a part of the factor.
So Dylan, who's received what. Is it something that LEAP can do on their side is include a disclosure if it's in a column or a row? Full disclosure, this company that you're reviewing has received the LEAP grant prior, so that the reviewers know.
Yeah, we could do that. It's important to have the transparency on the front end for the applicants too.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're talking, I mean, is there anything I haven't seen anything, maybe I missed it, that precludes like a chain business that doesn't have local owner operators from getting this? So there are a lot of chain businesses. You're saying that those businesses might deserve it more than if a manager who can, you said in this, it says a manager can apply for it. So are we putting preference to those small businesses over some of these because they already got a LEAP grant?
Dylan, can you
I don't know.
respond?
I don't think so. If I understand your question correct, Lindsay. It again, it's just, I think it was George who was talking about it. It's just useful to have that extra piece of knowledge if there's two equal applications you're looking at. You should receive the same score at the end, and you got to choose. You only have money to choose one, and for the reviewers to understand that and decide as they will.
I think that makes sense to me, but
Dylan, I guess that raises a different question for me though, is there a possibility a lot of the same people will be voting on this that supported the grant as well?
Voting on it as in reviewing it?
Yeah, reviewing, yes, thank you.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. And they're familiar with the process. You know, they understand how things work, and they understand, you know, the impact, you know, being told by these companies. Yeah.
I like that. Okay.
All right, so is there?
Are we ready to approve?
I'm not hearing an overriding opinion to remove it, but unless I'm not hearing correctly. It sounds to me, I mean, I'm of the opinion that that if someone is received other resources from another area, that should not hinder their ability to be a successful recipient of this grant. I think every business is standing on its own merit and their own financial needs and their own contributions to the community and their situation relative to being able to open their doors. So whether or not I likely most businesses are to a variety of different sources that may be available or they have access to. So I'm inclined not to remove it, but I also don't feel like it should be used against any particular business. Is there agreement with that?
But do we still agree with Jill's amendment though that
Yeah, I have no problem with her amendment.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry, can you reread the amendment? Repeat it.
I can.
It just takes off that you've approved. Take off that you've applied, and it says if you've received grants, right? Is that what it was?
It's going to read, describe any other financial support programs you have successfully secured at the local, state, or federal level.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So we're ready to move approval of the application. Can I make a motion to approve this, or do we need or do we already have that on the table?
I do not.
Do you want me to?
As
Do you want me
amended.
to run through all the changes?
Tom, I think that would be helpful. Just we can have it all stated, the changes that we've just gone through and made, and then
Okay. And
go ahead.
And Ms. Pope, if I missed anything, I hope you'll chime in as well. Okay, so this is the application for the East Lansing Downtown Development Authority Business Relief Program. To the top of the document, we will add a statement in line with the scoring criteria that the intention of the grant is to assist those who have experienced hardship due to COVID-19. We will remove question 4. Under the applicant acknowledgments and agreements, we will remove letter C, F, and G. We will remove question 14 and supplant it with the following. Are you applying for a grant for another business? If so, which? Back to number 13, we'll also add a link to the BSNA platform.
so that folks can look up their own parcel numbers. For question 15, we will adjust it to read, how long has this business existed in East Lansing? We will remove question 16. We will augment question 19 to the following. Do you own the building or business? Do you own the building the business is located in? If so, is there a mortgage? We will make that question optional. Under number 20, we will remove C and D. We will remove question 21. For question 22, we'll remove Michigan State University or area business staff. For question 24, we will add 24A, were you a recipient of PPP? We will remove question 27. We will remove question 31. And we will augment question 39 to read, describe any financial support programs you have successfully secured at the local, state, or federal level. Did I miss anything?
I think you've captured all of the changes. Thank you for that. Now, George, you offered a motion to approve the application as revised. Is there a second?
Correct.
I'll support.
It's been supported by Luke. We spent quite a bit of time on this, and I think we made significant improvements. Seeing that there's no other comments at this time, we'll just go ahead and approve the application. If Chad could call the roll.
Ballline,
Yes.
Mayor Byer,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Kroom,
Yes.
Diwan,
Yes.
Hackney,
No.
Lahanas,
Yes.
Rhodey,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
That passes 8-1.
Okay. Now, point of order, Tom, we're going back to discussion on approving the entire program.
Believe you've already done that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was confusing the criteria, eligibility criteria. So thank you everyone for your time on this. Are there any other items that we need to address? Any unfinished business agenda?
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Luke.
I'm just curious if any of our subcommittee meetings will be meeting in the near future, just because I think there are other things we should address. I mean, marketing could go over the money that we still have to spend. I have questions about now that businesses are opening, how they're reopening. I've heard a lot of concern about restaurants and seeing firsthand restaurants not wearing things like gloves and masks, and I'm curious how we should be dealing with that. I've had one, the owner of Blue Owl Coffee was curious about maybe doing some sort of event in the summer, and what that might entail. I just think there's a lot of things that we should be talking about right now, and I know these meetings are long and I know they're difficult via the internet, but that doesn't make them less important.
Right. Meetings of subcommittees will be communicated via staff, and I'm certain there are going to be a number of items that we'll be attending to here over the next several weeks. So committee members will just take note of any changes to the calendar via email, unless there's something else, Tom or Heather, you wish to add in. Speaking of which, are there any reports or other comments that board members wish to offer?
Yes, Greg Ballline here. If I may, I'd just like to express my gratitude to city staff, Mayor Byer. It's been a long day. City council meeting dragged on for a long time today. And I'd like to thank you for your patience and time dedicated to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg. I concur. Any other board member comments?
I'd like to share, this is Jeff, just very quickly, and there's no silver bullet when it comes to solving problems, financial problems for crisis situations. And, if there is an opportunity for us to continue to find ways to get funds into the hands of those that need it, I've said from the beginning, I don't necessarily see this as the end, but the beginning. So if there's an opportunity for us to continue this forward from a solving the problem solution standpoint, I'm all for it.
Thank you. Any other board member comment?
I have one other thing. Did council talk about, this is Lindsay, I'm sorry. Did council talk about the outdoor seating issue? Because if the governor's talking about changing things on the 15th, with this weather being so nice, I'd really like to know if we're going to help people get more outdoor seating, if we're going to help with the permits for that.
We did not talk about it today.
Okay. Can I just personally put a plug in there that on your next agenda that's talked about?
Yes. Would you also send me an email with a specific suggestion about what you think would be helpful?
All right. Anything that encourages outdoor seating.
Okay.
I'll get some ideas together, but I'd like to talk to people who have outdoor seating. So I don't.
Okay. Thank you. Luke?
Yeah. First, I think we neglected to formally reintroduce Mike back into the meeting, which I think we're required to do. So I guess I will do that. And
I'll second that.
All right.
Do we need
Thanks,
to?
guys.
Well, let's just all formally welcome him back. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Welcome back, Michael. I'm sorry it's taken so long.
And then
that's quite all right. Thank you.
Was there any discussion about any of the things that were in the letter that Peter sent to City Council today?
Yes, we talked about, can you talk about what we did, George, with respect to businesses?
Yeah, so they approved the business license reduction. We had recommended a $2,000 reduction. Council made the decision to eliminate all the business licenses for the year. So there's I think there's about 115 businesses. So it's the restaurant license, entertainment license, and there were several other businesses, jeweler and arcade, and some others that won't have to pay their business license. It was a total of about $88,000 that council will be foregoing in support of businesses.
Thank you. Any other comments? I just wanted to offer my own. I recognize that these meetings are long. They take up a lot of time, volunteer time of the DDA members. So I want to thank all of you for your patience and participation. All of us are trying to do the right thing for businesses that are really critically in need. And the effort that everyone's put into this is certainly very appreciated. So with that, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn, and I need a second.
I'll support.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you again. The meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
That's all. Take care.